Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ba'd. We are all aware that this year, 2024, has been dubbed the year of elections globally. At the same time, from an ummah perspective, we are all aware of the challenges that face the ummah globally. And these two issues are linked by one common factor, and that is the issue of leadership. If you look at elections, what are elections? You're electing a leader. And if you look at the pitiable situation that the ummah finds itself in currently, it's because of a lack of leadership, adequate leadership. And the solution then would be competent leadership. So everyone's talking about what leadership ought to be in the world that we live in today. Not only in terms of political leadership, but leadership at all levels of society. Leadership in every aspect and every facet of our existence. You, as an imam, are a leader. As a parent in your home, you're a leader. As an employer, you are a leader of your employees. All of us, to some extent or the other, we play a leadership role. We have a leadership function. So we should not assume that the discussion about leadership pertains only to political office. So if I'm not in politics, I'm not standing as a councillor, I'm not standing as an independent candidate in my area, then the discussion of leadership does not apply to me. No. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْعُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. Every one of you is a shepherd. And to the extent that you are a shepherd over your flock, be your flock your children or your employees or your musallis or your students in a classroom, then you are responsible for that leadership role that you have been tasked with. Now, as Muslims, we don't require life coaches or motivational speakers to come and tell us about what constitutes leadership and the kind of leadership qualities that we require today. We have it in our history. We have it in our legacy. And hence the topic today is to discuss one such personality, and that is Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. The reason why we speak about Umar, amongst other reasons, is that today even non-Muslim writers, Orientalist scholars, they say that the world needs an Umar. The world needs an Umar. The situation that we find ourselves in, we need a leader who has the kind of talents and the kind of values, the kind of strategy and the kind of acumen that Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu had. So, in the few minutes that I want to address you this afternoon, we obviously can't discuss the entire life story of Umar radiyallahu anhu, and that's not the purpose. I would, though, encourage you to read detailed books on the life of Umar radiyallahu anhu. But I will cherry pick a few incidents in the life of Umar to highlight certain lessons. The first thing that I want to speak about, and perhaps this is the greatest lesson that we can learn from the life of Umar. In the initial years of Islam, Umar radiyallahu anhu was not just an opponent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was amongst the most fierce of enemies to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was on a similar level to the likes of Abu Jahl in terms of opposition to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What had happened once that the Meccan leaders had come to a conclusion, a unanimous conclusion, that they had tried all tactics to stop Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they had failed. And they felt that the only option left now was to assassinate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But who was going to do it? That was the problem. That was the dilemma, because we know that the Arabs were very tribal. If you were to kill someone from one tribe, his entire tribe would retaliate. Even those who are not Muslim from the tribe of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would retaliate. That was the nature of tribalism in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So no one was ready to carry out this heinous task. When they had the meeting and they said, look, this is our problem. We see only one solution, and that is to assassinate Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But who will do it? The only hand that went up was the hand of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Now, to cut a long story short, Umar radiallahu anhu leaves with the intention of killing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's told that, you know what, before you go there, go see your sister and your brother-in-law have accepted Islam. So he does a pit stop at his sister's house. He finds them reciting the Quran, the verses of Surah Taha. The words of the Quran have such an impact on his heart, it melts his heart. By the time he comes to Dar-e-Arqam, he's ready to accept Islam. Now when he knocks at the door and they inquire from inside, that who is it? He says, Umar. There's a kind of panic that sets in because his reputation preceded him. He was a fierce character, very bold, very courageous. They were apprehensive about opening the door for Umar radiallahu anhu. Eventually Hamza radiallahu anhu, who had just accepted Islam, he was the 39th person to accept Islam, Hamza radiallahu anhu, he said, no, open, let's see. And Umar radiallahu anhu comes in and says, I've come to proclaim the Shahada. And he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. When he proclaims the Shahada, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu says it was a moment of great happiness. Now we could perform salah in public. We could make tawaf in public. Umar gave us great courage. He brought great esteem to the Muslims who were oppressed and suppressed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was so delighted that he proclaimed the takbir loudly, that Allahu Akbar, Umar has accepted Islam. But what led to this turn of events? That Umar wants to kill the Nabi of Allah, and now Umar becomes an ummati of Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What led to this turn of events? It was a dua, it was a supplication. You see, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not look at Umar as an enemy. He looked at Umar as a person with talent. And he said, oh Allah, both Umar and Amr, Abu Jahl's name was Amr, they have great talent. If not both of them, at least one of them. Guide them to Islam so that they can strengthen the effort of deen. This is the first quality of leadership. You don't look at those who you don't like because you don't like them. You don't look at how people are harming you personally. You see whether they have talent, capacity and ability to serve the cause. And you hone in on that. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, this is the same Umar who wants to kill me. This is the same Umar who is in opposition to me. No, this Umar has talent. How can we bring his talent onto the side of Islam? And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for that. And that dua led him to him being exposed to the verses of the Quran, which softened his heart and made him a Muslim. The long and short of it is this, that Umar who wanted to kill the Nabi of Allah, today he lies resting next to the Nabi of Allah. Because the Nabi of Allah showed leadership. That's leadership. You don't write people off. Today, one mistake, one error, one scandal, what they say, gammatig, yeah. End of it. Finish. You write him off. No. This man has got talent. Umar had such talent, he was one of only few people who were literate in Arabia. He was an astute businessman. He was rich already before Islam. He had a remarkable ability to negotiate. The Quraysh used to use him as an ambassador to deal with difficult tribal issues. He had a great grasp of Arab history and the history of the different tribes. And it wasn't because he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He used to say, during the time when he was a Khalifa, my father Khattab used to treat me very harshly. He wasn't a kind man. He used to treat me very harshly. But Umar never used that as an excuse, before Islam or after Islam. He made use of his talents. And that's what distinguished him amongst the Quraysh. He knew how to read, he could speak, he was eloquent, had a grasp of history, he was good at business, and he could represent his people on delicate and sensitive matters. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw this talent in Umar and made dua. And because of the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see that Umar radiallahu anh became not just a Sahabi. And this is the second thing that I want to highlight in terms of leadership. Umar then accepted Islam after Hamza. He became the 40th Muslim, the 40th companion or Sahabi to accept Islam. However, he didn't say, okay, the others preceded me. Uthman preceded me, Abu Ubaidah preceded me, Abdul Rahman preceded me, or Abdullah ibn Mas'ud preceded me, so that's my taqdeer, that's my fate, 40th. No, Umar made an effort. By the time he died, he was second in virtue only to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. From 40 to second. Islam does not begrudge you if you're a Johnny come lately. Islam has given us every opportunity to make up for lost time and to cover lost ground. Umar became the 40th Muslim, he didn't remain the 40th in virtue. He made such an effort that he's second only to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. When we go to Madinatul Munawwara, it's Assalamu alayka ya Rasulullah, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Bakr, Assalamu alayka ya Umar. The third thing that I want to highlight is that Umar radiallahu anhu had great acumen. There is one incident that's very famous, that when he wanted to make hijrah, then he went into the haram and he openly proclaimed. Others were making hijrah secretly, right? And he openly proclaimed and said, listen, whoever wants his mother to cry over him and his wife to become a widow, then let him dare to try and stop me from making hijrah. That was the bravery and the courage of Umar. But you can be courageous, you must not be reckless. When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told by Salman Farsi radiallahu anhu to dig a trench, when the Ahzab came, they were frustrated because they were bigger in number. They were much better equipped. That's why Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam dug the trench. The Muslims were not in a position to go into one-on-one, hand-to-hand combat. So, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam dug a trench. The Ahzab, the Confederates came. Now they're frustrated because they can't enter Medina. So they tried to goad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They said, "Oh Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is this? We are Arabs. Arabs don't fight like this, where you dig a trench and you sit on the other side of the trench. Come across. We thought you were courageous. We thought that you had bravery in you. Come across, man to man, hand to hand." Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam never fell for it. He never fell for it. He was courageous, but he was not reckless. The demands of that time were that stay behind the trench. You are outnumbered and you are ill-equipped. So Umar radiallahu anhu, he made this bold statement that whoever wants to try and stop me, let him try and stop me. His mother will cry over him and his wife will become a widow. He had two friends. They were very close, the three of them. He said to them, listen, we will meet at a specific time, at a specific place to make the hijrah. If anyone is not there at the stipulated time, the others will leave, understanding that he's not coming. Because his family may have got the better of him. It wasn't easy to make hijrah. We had a lot of family pressure. Imagine leaving the place where you lived your entire life, leaving everything behind and going to a new place and settling in a new place. So the next day, they come to this stipulated place. The one friend is there, the other friend is not there. So Umar radiallahu anhu says, right, let's move. Look at the ability to plan. Management, lessons of leadership. They embark on the journey, they come to Madinatul Munawwara. Umar radiallahu anh settles in Medina, his friend settles in Medina. The other one never came. Family got the better of him. Abu Jahl being Abu Jahl, sometime later he comes to Medina and he makes an effort on this friend of Umar radiallahu anh who came with Umar radiallahu anh for hijrah. And you know what he does? He tells him, listen, your mother back in Makkah, she's refusing to take a bath and she's refusing to come out and be exposed to sunlight. She says she won't do it until she doesn't see you. Now, I mean, your mother is your mother after all, right? So this friend of Umar radiallahu anh becomes very emotional. He says, no, let me go back to Makkah. Let my mother see me. Let me pacify her. So at least she doesn't put herself into this unnecessary difficulty. Umar radiallahu anh acumen, foresight, insight, tells him, don't go. Don't go. This is a trap. But this man is overcome by his love and his affection for his mother. He says, no, Umar, I have to go. Again now, look at leadership. Now you and I, what did I have said? I told you not to go, you want to go, then it's your problem. Don't hold me accountable, don't hold me responsible, don't come crying to me afterwards. No, no. Okay, if you insist on going, do this. Can I tempt you? I'll give you half of my wealth to keep you in Medina. Let that settle. Umar radiallahu anhu was willing to part with half of his wealth to preserve the iman of his friend. May Allah grant us such friends. You say a leader is more concerned about the welfare of the people that he leads than they are concerned about their own welfare. And this is how Allah describes Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the Quran. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. Worried about your well-being more than you worried about your own well-being. So Umar radiallahu anhu says, I'll give you half of my wealth, don't go. And Umar was a rich man. His friend says, no, no, my mother. Abu Jahl was smart, shrewd, cunning. Does Umar radiallahu anhu say, well, to hell with you then. I'm offering you money to stay in Medina and you still don't want to listen. No. Umar radiallahu anhu now gives him another option and says, okay, listen. If you insist on traveling with Abu Jahl back to Makkah, let me tell you, I don't trust this man. He's got something up his sleeve. Take my camel. My camel is faster, it's stronger, and ride at the back. Don't ride in the front. If at any time during the journey you see they're up to no good, make a U-turn and rush back to Medina. They won't catch you because this camel is very fast. His friend agrees. See, management style. Management. Told him, don't go. He said, no, I have to go. Try to tempt him with money. Don't go. No, I have to go. All right, if you insist on going, let's try and mitigate the risk. We try and mitigate the risk. Take my camel. So, they're on the journey. Abu Jahl is Abu Jahl. He tells this friend of Umar radiallahu anhu, listen, my animal is very sluggish. Let me hop in with you. My car is troubling, let me jump in with you. So this friend of Umar in his naivete says, okay. As soon as Abu Jahl jumps on the camel behind him, he abducts him and kidnaps him. And they take him back to Makkah and he breaks ties with the Muslim community. Now you see the next part of Umar radiallahu anhu's leadership. He doesn't write him off and say, well, I told him not to go, he didn't listen. I offered him money, he didn't listen. I gave him my camel and he still messed that up also. He continued to write to him, inviting him back to Medina until one day that friend returned to Medina. You give up on your own children so quickly. Get out of my house. I told you once, you didn't listen. I told you twice, you didn't listen. I told you 3 times, you didn't listen. That's not what a leader does. That's not how you manage people. Another lesson of leadership that we learn from the life of Umar radiallahu anhu, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would sit after Fajr and he would narrate to Sahaba any dream that he would have seen. Or he would ask them to narrate their dreams and he would interpret it for them. So he said to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that, Ya Rasulullah, or he said to the Sahaba that last night I saw a dream. And I was in Jannah. I saw this beautiful palace. It was absolutely amazing. And I thought to myself, if this palace is so captivating on the outside, I can only but imagine how beautiful it must be on the inside. So I started to move towards this palace with the intention of looking on the inside. The rule in Jannah, the outside is beautiful, but the inside is more beautiful. And that ought to be a rule for us as Muslims. Your outside must be clean, must be pure, must be beautiful, but your inside must be more clean and more pure and more beautiful. Because the inside is more important than the outside. Nonetheless, as Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam comes close to this palace, it occurs to him that I haven't found out whose palace is this. So he inquires from the angels that, whose palace is this? They say, this is the palace of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Allah has reserved it for him as a reward. Immediately Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stops. He says, then I won't enter. Why? Because Umar has a quality. In Arabic, they refer to it as ghayra. He's very private. He's very possessive. He doesn't like people to know about that which is part of his private affairs. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, Umar has not seen his own palace. It's not appropriate for me to see the inside of his palace before he's had the honor of seeing it. So Rasulullah ﷺ is narrating this incident to the Sahaba, and Umar radiallahu anh is sitting there. And he starts to weep and he says, Ya Rasulullah, it would have been an honor for me if you entered the palace before me. But you see, it wasn't about whether Umar would have taken offense or not. It was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaching us that leadership means you must accommodate the temperament of others. Everyone has got his own temperament, his own mizaj. A leader tries to accommodate everyone's temperament to the best of his ability. He doesn't challenge their temperaments. He doesn't say, I am the leader, so my way or the highway. We'll do it the way I say it needs to be done. No, where you can accommodate somebody else's temperament, then you accommodate it. Within your marriage, within the work environment, or in every other environment. That is a hallmark of a leader. And that is the kind of values and qualities that is lacking in us. We can't accommodate the temperaments of others. We only want to challenge. We want to refute. Why must he be like that? If that's his mizaj, then why must we accept it? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't have that attitude. One day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting at home. He was relaxing. Now when you sit back, your garments like kind of move up. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's lungi, his loincloth came up. But the sattar was still covered. But his shins were exposed. There's a knock on the door. He asks, who is it? Abu Bakr, come in. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is relaxing. Same posture. After a while, there's another knock on the door. Who is it? Umar, come in. Then there's a third knock on the door. Who is it? Uthman. The Nabi of Allah doesn't give permission. He first stands up, he covers his shins. Then he gives permission. Aisha radiallahu anha is watching, she's observing. After they have departed, she says, Ya Rasulullah, my father Abu Bakr came in, you just relaxed. Umar came in, you relaxed. When Uthman came in, you covered your shins. Why? He said, Aisha, Uthman is a shy man. He doesn't even take a bath naked. If he had to see my shins exposed, he would have felt embarrassed. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was not doing anything wrong. He was the Nabi. He was the father-in-law. This was the son-in-law. But he accommodated the temperament of Uthman. I normally say to the men, if your wife says put the washing in the basket, you don't tell her it's my basket, it's my washing, it's my house, I'll put it where I want to put it. For us, it may be, what's the big difference if I put it here or there? But if it irritates her, accommodate her temperament. It's the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is what leadership is. That is what leadership is. Another incident which I share with you, when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was on his deathbed, then he called a number of the senior Sahaba individually. He told them, I'm thinking the best man to succeed me is Umar. What's your opinion? Everyone said, indeed you are right, O Abu Bakr. He is the best person to succeed you. One Sahabi, Talha radiallahu anhu, said, look, Umar's virtue, Umar's ability, Umar's qualities are beyond doubt. There is a concern that I have. Umar is very stern. He's renowned for his sternness. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, don't worry about that. The burden of leadership will mellow him. And there's a point I want to address here. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting one day, some women came to consult him, came to ask him some questions. And whilst they were engaging with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Umar radiallahu anhu came. When they saw Umar radiallahu anhu come, they scattered. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam chuckled and he said, oh Umar, see, these women are so scared of you. Umar radiallahu anhu got upset. He said, you're not scared of the Nabi of Allah, you're scared of me. Who's more senior? Who's more superior? So these ladies hit back and they said, yes, Umar, we're not scared of the Nabi of Allah, but we're scared of you. Because Umar radiallahu anhu had that stern approach. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once told him, Umar, if you enter a valley and the devil is there, he takes a U-turn. Hasty retreat. Now, leadership demands that sometimes you put up an appearance for the sake of achieving an objective. I read something remarkable. We all just know that Umar radiallahu anhu was stern, full stop. And after he became Amirul Mu'mineen, he mellowed. But there's more detail to it. So one scholar writes and says, sometimes you have to pretend to be stern to achieve a particular objective, but you're not naturally stern. Let's say your small kid at home is being a bit mischievous. You find it funny. You actually find it cute. You're smiling, you're chuckling in your heart, but you have to pretend to be angry because you don't want him to make it a habit. You want him to learn manners. You want him to learn what's the right way. You understand he's a kid. Kids are kids. Children will be children. Boys will be boys. So you're smiling when he's not looking. In your heart, you're chuckling. You find it cute. But in front of him, you extern. Don't do that again. If you do it, this will happen. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being a Nabi, had to be soft. In order to ensure that people didn't take advantage of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Umar radiallahu anhu had to be stern. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was soft by nature. In order to ensure that people didn't take advantage of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu was stern. But Umar radiallahu anhu was not stern by nature. How do we know this? The scholars tell us, if a person is stern by nature, children will not gravitate towards him. And if he's lenient by nature, children will love him and he will love children. When you study the history of Umar radiallahu anhu, children loved him and he loved children. That's why when he became the Amirul Mu'mineen, he never showed that sternness which he showed in the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Umar radiallahu anhu and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what's the point? Leadership means you must do what needs to be done at the time, even if it goes against your natural temperament. If you naturally like to speak, but the time demands that you don't speak, then zip it. That's leadership. We say, no, I told him what I needed to tell him. He doesn't like it, he must eat 3 rotis extra. His problem, not mine. If leadership demands that you swallow your opinion at that time, even if you're a very opinionated person, then you swallow it. You've got to do that which is out of character for the sake of the situational demands, as they would say in management training or leadership training. Today, when a person is appointed or elected and he gives his inaugural address, people pay a lot of attention, right? The media cover it, it's recorded, it's put into the archives, that when so-and-so came into office, this was the first speech that he gave. There's one sentence in the first speech that Umar radiallahu anhu gave that I want to share with you. He said something that on the face of it looks very straightforward, but the more you think about it, it's so deep. He said, "O people, Allah will test me because of you and Allah will test you because of me." Today, leaders, when they speak, they simplify things, they romanticize things, and they speak in cliches. Yes, we can. That kind of stuff. Umar radiallahu anhu was very realistic, very pragmatic. He said, listen, the deeper meaning of the sentence is, I'm not perfect. So at times I will make mistakes and as a result you'll be tested. But neither are you perfect. At times you'll make mistakes and that will test my patience. So do not expect a relationship of perfection between you and I. You must be patient when I'm out of line and I'll have to be patient when you're out of line. What a profound statement. What insight in terms of leadership. He didn't say, oh people, don't worry, everything's going to go well. That's what politicians do. They say what they don't mean and they say what is not realistic because it sounds nice. It's flowery language. You will be tested because of me and I will be tested because of you. To admit that at times you would get it wrong is not contrary to leadership. It is actually the essence of leadership. Umar radiallahu anhu shows us how to take unpopular decisions but for the right reasons. One of the first decisions Umar radiallahu anhu took was to remove Khalid bin Walid as the commander of the Muslim army whilst they were engaged in battle and whilst they were winning because of the strategic ability of Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Very unpopular thing to do, very risky thing to do. Leaders today are obsessed with wanting to remain popular because they have to get re-elected. Or even if it is no election per se, you just want to remain popular because you want people to like you. That's not the demands of leadership. Leadership is you've got to do what is right. Umar radiallahu anhu had insight. He said, hey, people are turning their gaze away from Allah. They're not putting their reliance in Allah. They're putting their reliance in Khalid. Khalid is a creation of Allah. So it's nothing personal. I remove him, so victory must be attributed to Allah and not to him. As unpopular as that would be. But he understood what is more important. The people's tawakkul must be in Allah. And Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was also a leader. He took it in the right spirit. And he continued with the same enthusiasm. I'll just mention 2 or 3 more. There's many examples that we can give. I mean, such a rich life. Once, one of the superpowers sent an emissary to meet Umar radiallahu anhu. Now, unlike today, I mean, if I can come to your country, I know exactly what your leader looks like. I know what he ate for supper last night, because we live in a global village. News reaches everywhere, right? In those days, it was not like that. They didn't know what Umar looked like. They were coming from another country. They didn't know who he was. They just knew that the leader of the Muslims is a man by the name of Umar. So when this emissary comes into Medina, he's looking around to see where's the leader. Because there was a particular style that was in vogue in those times. The leader would move with a massive entourage. He would have these bulky clothing and garments to show grandeur and to show majesty. And there would be a lot of formalities. You couldn't just walk up to him and start chatting. Now, he's looking around, but he sees no such individual. He looks and he looks and he can't find anyone. So eventually now, he is compelled to ask that, where is your leader, Umar? So someone points to a tree and says, there is he, they're sleeping under the tree, having his afternoon siesta, qaylula. In our terminology, we would say the man was gobsmacked. That the leader of such a vast, expanding Muslim world is sleeping under a tree. No entourage, no bodyguards, in simple garb. So he approaches Umar radiallahu anhu, and as he comes closer, I mean, his approaching movement wakes up Umar radiallahu anhu. So Umar radiallahu anhu engages him. So he says something in Arabic, which is profound. If you want to be a leader who leaves a legacy, then you must understand this principle. This emissary, non-Muslim, said to Umar, Adalta, you are a just ruler. And because you are just, fa'aminta, peace has prevailed. Security has prevailed. Fanimta, that's why you can sleep without any bodyguard under a tree. If you're not just, you'll never leave a legacy. If you're not just with your children, they'll all hate you. The one you favored and the one you didn't favor. You're not just with your students, they'll all dislike you. You're not just with your employees or your employer, you'll never have a legacy if you're not just. Umar radiallahu anhu was obsessed with justice. He was obsessed with justice. He had a son who was in Egypt and he made a mistake. Now the punishment had to be meted out against him as a penal code for that mistake. The governor Amr bin As radiallahu anhu said, listen, I will mete out the punishment. I mean, you can't exempt him because his father is the Khalifa, but let's not do it in public. It's embarrassing to the Khalifa for his son to be reprimanded and punished in public. So he took him home and he meted out the punishment at home. When Umar radiallahu anh got to find out about this, he summoned Amr, the governor, and his son. And he said, what is this? What is this? When Joe Soap's son breaks the law, he's punished in public. When Umar's son breaks the law, he's punished in private. He officially rebuked Amr bin As radiallahu anh, was the governor, and he punished his son a second time in Medina in full view of the public so that the scales of justice must be balanced. When there was a famine and people in other parts of the Muslim world did not have certain foods, even though those foods were available in Medina, he refused to eat it. He said, how can I be a leader if I don't know what my people are going through? One day, Ali radiallahu anh found him running after a camel. Told him, you know what you're doing? He said, no, there's a camel from the zakat stock that ran loose. He said, but there's enough workers that you can chase it. He said, no, it's my responsibility. I will have to account before Allah Ta'ala if this animal gets away. I can't wait for some worker or some laborer to go and do it. Umar radiallahu anh had great political acumen. He had great political acumen. He never allowed the senior Sahaba to settle outside of Medina. Why? You see, it was a different time that they lived in. People didn't know Umar, they didn't see Umar, they didn't know Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they didn't see Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they only heard about it. There was no technology like there is today. right? So, if the senior Sahaba were to settle in various parts of the Muslim world, people would forget about the Khalifa and start to gravitate towards those personalities that were closer to them. Umar radiallahu anhu was humble, but not to the point of being foolish. He said, listen, it's not about me, it's about the centrality of the Khilafah. If I allow the senior Sahaba to leave Medina and to settle in various parts, the whole Ummah will scatter in different directions. He kept all of the senior Sahaba in one place in Madinatul Munawwara to centralize the Khilafat, not for personal interest, but for the sake of the Ummah. For the sake of the Ummah. That was the political acumen of Umar radiallahu anhu. He was away, like you can't believe. Once there was a man who didn't attend the gathering. Umar radiallahu anhu said, where is he? Famous incident. They said, oh no, he's got a bit of a problem with alcohol. That he wrote to him, Hamim, Tanzilul Kitabi min Allahi al-Aziz al-Alim, Ghafiri Dhambi wa Qabili Tawb. But the point is this, he knew who was who in that congregation. He knew when the man was absent and he knew when the man was present. How many leaders are so socially aware? They know exactly where the person is supposed to be and where they aren't supposed to be, and what is their situation, that he could inquire, that where is this individual? I need to know where he is and what's his well-being like. I'll conclude with this one more incident from the life of Umar radiallahu anhu. Once Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told the Sahaba that make dua to Allah, but don't be prescriptive to Allah. So if you want Jannah, ask for the highest stage in Jannah. Salillah al-Firdaus. Ask Allah for Jannatul Firdaus. But don't say, no, Allah, they in Jannatul Firdaus, you look, I want a house like this, I want a car like that, I want a wife like that, and I want servants like this, and I want food like no. That is disrespectful to Allah. Leave it to the knowledge of Allah. Leave it to the power of Allah. So Umar radiallahu anhu used to make this dua, that, oh Allah, grant me martyrdom in your path, but also grant me death in the city of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sahaba could never understand this. They could never understand this. They would say, how is it, O Umar, that you can get martyrdom when you stay in Medina? The Khalifa was not allowed for security reasons to go and join any expedition. So if you're not going to join any expedition, how can you have martyrdom? And if you join an expedition hoping for martyrdom, then you're not going to die in Madinatul Munawwara. But Umar radiallahu anhu was not prescriptive to Allah. He had two seemingly conflicting desires, to die a shaheed, but also to be buried in Madinatul Munawwara. He put it in Allah's hands. He just continued to make the dua. Oh Allah, I would love to die the death of a martyr, and I would love to die in Madinatul Munawwara. And what happened? The shahadat came seeking him. And the shahadat found him on the musalla of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is where he was fatally wounded and he passed away. When Umar radiallahu anhu was wounded, I'll conclude on this. When Umar radiallahu anhu was wounded, he fell unconscious because it was a poisoned, two-edged dagger. It was a disgruntled worker who brought his matter to Umar radiallahu anhu, and Umar radiallahu anhu ruled in favor of his employer. So, Umar radiallahu anhu was in the Fajr Salah when this happened. Killed him. He stabbed him. Umar radiallahu anhu fell unconscious. So they carried him to the house. When he woke up, what was the first thing he asked? Have the people performed their salah? I was saying this the other day. The foremost responsibility of a leader is to build spiritual capacity. Without taqwa in your people, you'll never prosper. Because taqwa is the foundation for unity. And taqwa is the foundation for individual and collective prosperity. Everything else then will fall into place, but taqwa is the foundation. The first question he asked, have the people performed salah? Yes. Abdurrahman bin Auf took over and he completed the salah. Okay, bring me water. I have my salah to conclude. Although I'm dying, but I also have to perform my salah. I'm not dead yet. Now when he performs his salah, he has a question. See, leaders. Who stabbed me? Who stabbed me? They said, no, it's this Majusi, this fire worship, the servant of Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu anhu. He said, Alhamdulillah, I don't want my blood to be on the hands of any Muslim. That's a leader. I don't want anyone from my followers to have to bear responsibility for having killed me. Non-Muslim, different matter. But I thank Allah that the blood of my body is not on the hands of any one of my fellow believers and my fellow brothers. I'll leave you with this. I just gave you a bit of a, what they say, teaser, taster. You know, sometimes you're walking in the mall and they say, sir, just have a taste. They want to tempt you that if you like the taste, then you'll buy the product. So I've given you a bit of a taste, a bit of a teaser. Go and read authentic books in history found in easy to understand English on the life of these great personalities which Allah has bestowed us with. The likes of Abu Bakr, Umar, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam as the greatest example, and imbibe these qualities within yourself. The ummah needs leadership, humanity needs leadership. But what kind of leadership? That you will find in the Quran and Sunnah. May Allah grant me and all of us the tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم إنا نسألك من كل خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، ونعوذ بك من كل شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ. سبحان ربنا رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين.